The storm that barely raised an eyebrow as it moved across the Gulf of Mexico visited upon Georgia the worst devastation since Sherman made his march to the sea. Alberto stalled over the Fort Valley area and would not leave it until it had caused the worst flooding in the history of the state of Georgia. The Georgia Division was not spared from Alberto's fury, as a heavy toll was extracted on Brosnan Yard in Macon, Georgia, and the tracks of the entire Southwest District. The first signs of trouble came late on July the 4th. The rains moved in, and it was quickly evident that they would not soon stop. Local forces began patrolling track at 10 p.m. on the Southwest District and in the vicinity of Macon on the main line between Atlanta and Valdosta. The track inspections continued non-stop during the night, and with morning it appeared that the division would survive with only minor problems. But the rain would not stop. On the morning of the 5th, the order went out that all trains in the affected areas could not run until the track was inspected ahead of them, and train speed was reduced to 1/2 timetable speed. A ballast train was called out of Columbus, Georgia to fill in the small washouts on the M line between Fort Valley and Columbus. But still the rain would not stop. The water began to rise quickly that morning, and soon tracks around Macon were in danger. The Postel Quarry outside Macon was ordered to load all available hopper cars with ballast. Trucking companies were called to begin bringing stone to various trouble spots. It was about this time that things really started to get bad. The main line south of Macon was washed out. The ballast train out of Columbus was blocked at Reynolds, Georgia by mudslides and washouts on one side and washouts and submerged track on the other. It was parked on the main line where it sat isolated and useless for 4 days. All available forces were brought to Macon to concentrate on opening the main line to Valdosta. It seemed for a while at this point that the efforts of the Georgia Division track and B&B forces would be rewarded with victory. The main line was restored to service that evening, and a ballast train headed north out of Macon to stabilize problem areas around the Toalaga River, but it kept on raining and raining and raining. One train passed south out of Macon, then the track disappeared beneath the brown water. The ballast train that went north was caught by the rapidly rising water, and the crew was trapped on the train for over 30 hours. With the water claiming victory, there was little that MWNS forces could do. During the night, Brosnan Yard was emptied of hazardous material cars, and arrangements were made for closing down yard operations. July the 6th dawned on weary but undefeated MWNS forces, who were gathering the materials necessary to begin the track restoration that they knew would soon be upon them. Also, the track was being constantly inspected, not to pass trains, but to evaluate the damage and plan the work ahead. A command center was established in the Assistant Division Engineer's office in Macon, in which operations were directed throughout the flood and work that followed. As the reports of track damage continued to come in, the decision was made to call in reinforcements from other divisions. Flange wheel dump trucks were drastically needed and were brought in from as far away as West Virginia. All air dump cars were located and diverted to Macon. Then, as conditions continued to worsen, gangs were called in from the Piedmont, Tennessee, and Alabama divisions. In the end, help came from Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Piedmont, Virginia, Pocahontas, and Kentucky divisions. System gangs helped with manpower, camping facilities, and cooking facilities. Contractors were lined up from all around the area to bring in heavy machinery to handle the tougher jobs. And as had become customary, it rained during most of the day as the last bit of life was wrung out of Alberto over middle Georgia. On July the 6th, Brosnan Yard went underwater when the levee protecting it was breached. The levee designed to keep water out of the yard now became dams that held the water in turning Brosnan Yard into Brosnan Lake, with an estimated 500 million gallons of water retained in the impoundment, with depths of up to 20 feet. July the 7th proved to be a better day in some ways. At least the rain had stopped, other than an occasional thunderstorm. The water in the Ocmulgee River had crested at record level and was receding. The work on the main line north out of Macon was proceeding, and damage, while extensive, was not as bad as it had been feared it would be. Another bright spot was the old Central of Georgia line between Atlanta and Macon, which had very little damage. Trains were diverted to this line, and operations continued between Atlanta and Savannah. The bad news also came this day. The track just south of Macon was extensively damaged, and the Flint River on the Southwest District continued to rise. The damage estimates were totaled and revealed that 4.3 miles of track had been washed out and would require over 415,000 cubic yards of fill material to reconstruct. Several of the washouts were over 20 feet deep, with some up to 40 feet deep, and varied in length from 50 feet up to 3/4 of a mile at the Flint River on the M line. Many more miles of track had been damaged and would need repairs to allow safe operations. The normal mode of damage repair, stay on the job until the track is back in service, was not appropriate for a catastrophe of such magnitude. A plan was devised whereby work would continue around the clock, but in two 12-hour shifts. The 350 Norfolk Southern employees and the contractors operating the 120 pieces of machinery on the job were split into equal shifts. Food and bottled water was brought out to the gangs to further expedite the work process. To handle the repairs at the Flint River, a special conveyor aggregate train was leased and shuttled between Barron Quarry in Columbus and the job site. This 15-car train unloads from one end by utilizing a continuous belt conveyor. Several days were saved by using this train. Priorities were set as to the order in which repairs would be made. The main line between Atlanta and Valdosta was the first concern, then the H line from Macon to Fort Valley, and on down the line. It was highly desirable to get Brosnan Yard back in service, but that could not be accomplished until the Ocmulgee River decided to give possession back to Norfolk Southern. With a plan in place and the people on the job, things soon began to happen. The main line between Atlanta and Macon was returned to service on July the 8th, and on July the 11th, the main line south of Macon was placed back in service, allowing trains to make the trip to Jacksonville for the first time since July the 5th. The lines from Macon to Fort Valley and Macon to Brunswick were placed back in use on July the 12th. Brosnan Lake became Brosnan Yard again after the levee was broken, which allowed most of the water to drain out, and several pumps with a capacity to pump 250,000 gallons per minute removed the rest. The other lines fell into place, and traffic was running on all lines by July 17th, except at the Big Hole on the Fort Valley to Americus line. At 600 feet long and 40 feet deep, the Big Hole took a little more time to fill than the other locations. This job was bid out to a contractor to rebuild the fill, and Norfolk Southern forces then replaced the track restoring service on July 21st. Only under the most trying circumstances does the true character of people emerge. The July flood was the most trying that most, if not all, of the people involved with it had ever encountered, and every person proved that Norfolk Southern people are of the highest caliber to be found on the earth. Working under the most horrendous conditions imaginable, tired to the bone, and for days without any end in sight, there was nothing exhibited but dedication, personal sacrifice, and hard work. The situation was in a constant state of flux. Men and equipment were arriving piecemeal and had to be directed to various work locations in the field by the command post. Most of the forces involved simply found a hole and, with bulldog determination, repaired it and then found another hole. The command post provided the plan and coordination for the effort, but it was the men who performed the Herculean task of carrying out the work. Many of the men were so dedicated that they had to be forced to go in at the end of their shifts. They found it very distasteful to leave a job that was not yet finished.